The entire story of human existence has been the biggest lie that we have ever been exposed to. And the intention of this channel and the reason why I do these videos is to help all of you listeners start to get a better understanding of both the internal and the external architecture of what is really controlling our world and our reality. Now, I go deeply into concepts of spirituality, into concepts of psychology. I touch on metaphysics. I touch on what some people might consider to be supernatural or quite woo-woo topics. I talk a lot about interdimensional beings. And the intention with this channel is, again, to really start to put together the pieces, to ground spirituality with actual facts, with actual true stories of our history, because we have to remember history is his story, the story that has been shared by the victors. Now, in last week's video, I went more deeply into the Anunnaki, the Draco reptilians. I went deeply into the fall of Atlantis, into the arrival of interdimensional or extraterrestrial forces into Earth's field thousands and thousands of years ago. And especially, I find this topic to be extremely important at the moment as we are experiencing so much information that is relating to disclosure. Now, it's very important to go backwards to understand what is happening in the present moment, because as I continuously say, everything is interconnected. Now, for years and years and years, I have spent my life researching all kinds of topics, not necessarily knowing why I was researching them. But what I can tell you is that from as far back as I can remember, when I was even a child, is I remember thinking just how there were so many things about this world that really just didn't make any sense to me. So many things that just didn't really add up. And over the years, I have really been guided in a variety of different directions to better understand how things operate. And I am somebody who finds myself constantly trying to understand systems. And really, what has guided me to now start doing these videos is, in order to fight the system that has oppressed us, we have to understand how that system functions. And for a long time, people have questioned, why is the world so strange? Why do things work the way they do? How is there so much evil in this world? And the reason why we have not really been able to understand these things is because of the fact that we have been trying to understand these things from purely a physical and logical perspective. But this is where we now have to bring spirituality, metaphysics into the fold, and even magic, because all of these things we have been taught to believe are woo-woo, when they are in fact a big part of our human story. So in last week's video, I went more deeply into how Atlantis fell and how these interdimensional extraterrestrial beings entered into Earth's field and have been manipulating humanity for as far back as we can remember. Because when we look at the systems of power, and I really like to refer to it as the pyramid of power, because the way the power structures on this earth have been built is that everything is on a very hierarchical level, and we have to understand that what is manifested in the outside world is also a manifestation of what is going on internally, because as the old Hermetic principle goes, as above, so below, as within, so without. Because remember, as human beings, we are a microcosm of the macrocosm. The human being, as I explained in last week's video, was created by the Most High, by the divine, and that the way we were created was not accidental. it was not just haphazard. We didn't just arrive here, but it was by very intelligent design that we were created, the way the human body was created, the way the mind body soul connection was created to work as a whole, is really a mini version of the cosmos, which is why some of you might have heard the saying that inside each and every human being is the cosmos, because that really is the way we operate. But what has happened for thousands and thousands of years is that humanity has operated primarily through mind and physics, but more so, and when I say physics, I'm really talking to physicality and the body and matter. So even though the mind is something that is non-material, it's non-tangible, it is really what rules our existence. It's really what rules the entire human experience, because remember, first comes thought. The thought is what generates the action. The thought is what generates the behavior. And this is why, so this week I want to go much more deeply into psychological manipulation. And because, as I explained in last week's video about the power of human belief has the ability to create reality, we have to understand how, since the arrival of these interdimensional forces, which are really still in existence today, but simply operating behind human hybrid proxies, which is what we call the elite, the royal families, those people who are at the highest levels of the pyramid of power, are really proxies that were created. These are descendants of the Nephilim, and not all are descendants of the Nephilim, but we have to remember those at the highest levels of power were a breed of human beings that was created by interbreeding these non-terrestrial beings with human women to create what the Bible refers to as the Nephilim. And basically, a lot of the elites that we see today, the royal families, even Hollywood people, are descendants of these Nephilim bloodlines that were specifically created by these non-terrestrial beings in order to control humanity, in order to control Earth, and in order to rule Earth. Because we have to remember that there are 12 universal laws that previously guided the human experience. But what happened along the way is that most of these universal laws were, let's say that these interdimensional beings were able to find loopholes in these laws and have been playing around with these loopholes. And so, knowing that because of these universal laws, knowing that beings that were not of this earth had no right, should I say, to intervene into what was going on this planet, what they did was that they created a hybrid race that had human DNA, that because we as humans were gifted this planet, this is our home, and we are the ones who have dominion over this planet. But these interdimensional beings knew that they could not rule this earth if they did not have human DNA, which is why from a higher dimension, they manipulate humanity, and they are the ones who are puppeteering the elites and rulers of this world. And I say elites because they're really not elites, but this is a word that they have chosen for themselves, and for centuries and millennia have lived by the premise that they have a divine right to rule because they are descendants from these divine beings. Now, these divine beings, they call themselves divine beings because they were of a much higher frequency, of a much higher vibration, until they fell in consciousness, choosing to follow service to self-consciousness rather than service to all. So in this week's video, what I really want to go into more detail about is how these beings have continued to control humanity and control Earth by way of psychological manipulation, and also what we might term as magic. Because what I'm going to talk a lot about Hollywood, because what we have to understand is that Hollywood and media at large has played a very important role in shaping the belief system that humanity holds and therefore how we are creating the reality in which we live. Because the beings that came into Earth's field and have been manipulating us for thousands of years, they had a very good understanding of human psychology. They had a very clear understanding that we literally are creator beings, as the old saying goes. We as human beings were created in the image of the gods, or the image of God. And that is because God, the Most High, is a being that has the ability to create. And we too, as humans, have the ability to create, just like we can have an idea and then we create whatever it is that we want from that idea by taking action on it. Now, this has been happening on a grander scale, on a much larger scale, where we have been manipulated into using our creative powers to create a reality that does not serve us as human beings, but that serves the interdimensional rulers that have been controlling the human experience and the trajectory of human evolution for thousands and thousands of years. Because when many of us question what the fuck is wrong with our world and how did we get here, it's the fact that this was all generated by design by interdimensional beings who have sought to control humanity and to control this planet. Now, again, some of the things that I might say sound absolutely preposterous, and it's okay if you don't believe me. I'm not here to convince you of anything. I am simply here to share truth, and as much as I have been reluctant to share a lot of the stuff that I share, this is what I have been guided to, because this is my mission and this is the work I do. The mission that I was sent here to Earth for and to be present in this lifetime is to help people to really step into their soul mission. Because every single human being on this planet, those of us who are fully organic and biological being that have a soul, because not every human being on this planet has a soul and is 100% fully organic. Now, those of us who do have a soul, our souls literally chose to incarnate on the planet at this time and be part of this massive shift that is taking place. Because what is also happening, remember, everything happens in cycles. We are completing a 26,000 year cycle where we have to remember that karma is not always what it appears to be, and that the real karma, or the real way in which karma used to take place, was also manipulated by these interdimensional beings that have been, let's say, messing with the human experience and life here on Earth for thousands of years. And so what is happening now is that the Most High is intervening alongside other interdimensional beings who are of service to all consciousness, that are here to help in the liberation of humanity. Because what disclosure is really about is about, and this is why disclosure has been blocked for as far back as we can remember, and why the governments of the world have not wanted to disclose the truth about our cosmic origins, because then that will force us to start to question religion, politics, literally everything that we have been taught through the education system. Everything that we have been taught has served to reinforce our programming to manipulate what we are creating. Because, for example, imagine you have a child, and from the moment that child is born, you tell the child, you are a dog, you are a dog, you are a dog, and you treat the child as a dog, and you continue repeating the child, it is a dog, and you teach the child to operate as a dog. Once that child gets older, that child is literally going to believe that they are a dog and behave in such a manner. Now, I'm giving you an extreme example here, but this is essentially what has happened with human beings. As much as we are all divine and have extremely advanced abilities, what we would consider supernatural are actually natural human abilities, but over thousands and thousands of years, we have been continuously told that we are less than, that we are insignificant, that we can only access the divine through an intermediary such as a priest or an imam or a rabbi, that we are less than, that we are sinful, that we are incapable, that we are small, that we are inferior. And so what has happened is that over time, we are only using a fraction of our capacities. It's like, for example, I am not a technical person. I really struggle with technology and I'm really not tech savvy. But give a non-tech savvy person as myself a phone or a computer, and now give a tech genius the same phone or the same computer, and we are going to accomplish very different things, because I do not have the know-how of all the things that I am capable of doing through the phone or the computer, whereas somebody who is very tech savvy would be able to do all kinds of incredible things. And so that is essentially what has happened. We, beings that could be using 100% of our brains, have been literally programmed over thousands of years to only use such a small percentage of what we are really capable of. What if I told you that we could levitate, that we could make ourselves invisible, that we could manipulate frequencies and energies, that we could fly? These are things that seem impossible to the human mind, because this is what has been repeated to us over and over and over and over and over and over again, that we believe it. And like I explained in last week's video, with the placebo effect, shows the power of human belief, that if you believe something enough, it becomes reality. So the fact that through the placebo effect, just because we believe that we are healing, the human body has the ability to heal itself. And that is why the number one thing that has been hijacked for thousands of years is our beliefs. Because if we believe things in a certain way, and if enough people believe the same thing, then even if that belief is false, it has the ability to become reality. So just think about all of the things that we believe about ourselves. And this is where now people say, fake it till you make it. Because especially when it comes to, let's talk about manifestation techniques now, for many, many years, especially since the introduction of the law of attraction, many human beings have now become more familiar with techniques of manifestation. But remember that what is shared with the masses most often is half-truths. They'll give us maybe 80% truth and 20% distortion, because when you don't have the whole picture, even the truth that you are given becomes distorted because you're missing half of the equation. Just a moment. Apologies, my phone was ringing. So yes, as I was saying, can't remember where I was now, so I'm just going to keep going. So psychological manipulation. Oh yes, so how we have been manipulated into believing certain things where we're only using such a small capacity of what we are really capable of. Imagine if when we were born, and from the moment we were born, we were continuously taught about how we have incredible abilities and how we are creative geniuses and how we have the ability to do all of these incredible things that we think we cannot do, is eventually we would all grow up believing and knowing that these are the things that we were capable of, and therefore the reality in which we are living would be totally, totally different. And that is why the education system was created in such a way to keep people in stillness. Remember, we have our left and our right brain. We have our creative and our logic brain, our analytical and our intuitive brain. But with the patriarchal society and the way society has been built, and remember, the patriarchy is not just about favoring men over women. It is also about favoring masculine energies over feminine energies, which means more things like analytics and logic and structure and science over intuition, harmony and beauty and art. So these things have not been developed. We have not been developed, or should I say, we have not grown up focusing on things like intuition and our more spiritual abilities, everything has been physical, physical, physical. And that is where we have become disconnected, because as human beings, we are both spirit and matter, but we have not been given enough, we have not been giving enough emphasis to the spiritual side of things. And this is where things like, for example, the New Age spiritual movement has definitely brought a lot of this information back into our realm of understanding. But as I said before, they give us 80% truth, 20% distortion. So for example, when the law of attraction came in, it says, oh, if you just believe, eventually it will happen. But what they didn't tell us is that we have to take actions on those beliefs, which is why people who have been working with manifestation techniques for however long they have and nothing is really happening, is because those changes, those new beliefs, they have to be anchored in our body. As Yeshua said very well, and we all know of the many miracles that Yeshua performed, he said clearly, these miracles I perform, you shall perform greater miracles than I. He literally came to remind humanity of what we are really capable of. For example, and other ascended masters came as well. For example, the Buddha. The Buddha was just a random, natural, normal human being who decided that he wanted to reach enlightenment and was able to sit under a tree and meditate for many years without eating or sleeping or consuming anything, because he reached a certain vibrational frequency that allowed him to exist in a state of being that did not require him to eat or to drink or to sleep. Because this is just how powerful the human belief is. So for example, the 4-minute mile? Initially, everyone was like, no, it's not possible for humans to run a mile in under 4 minutes. And then one gentleman, I can't remember his name, broke that record. And then thereafter, many people started breaking that record, because once it is, seeing is believing. Once somebody accomplishes it, then other people say, oh, okay, yeah, that's possible. And then it just becomes a natural ability. And so that is why we have been operating out of distorted consciousness, distorted programming that is keeping us in a belief system that is not allowing us to create a reality that actually serves us. So if we go back to the video that was posted last week that talked about interdimensional beings who came into Earth's field and were pushing service to self rather than service to all. And this is how our societies have been built. If we look at modern society today, it seems that people who do evil are celebrated. People who do disgusting things are celebrated. How is it that the youth today look up to Hollywood actors and musicians who behave in extremely promiscuous ways and who have very distorted values, which we now seem to be celebrating as what we should all be striving towards? And then we question why humanity has fallen apart and why we are living in a world that is so corrupt and why we can't seem to trust one another. It's because the values that once tied us together as a human species is now, well, those values have shifted. And it seems that unless we are, in order, what has been anchored into our psyche for such a long time is to get ahead, we have to take from others. Look at the way society is set up. It's we reward organizations and individuals who continue to pillage, whether that's pillaging human beings, whether that's pillaging nature, whether that is asserting dominance over other people. And it seems that those are the people who young people look up to and say, oh, I want to be more like, the Kardashians. I mean, honestly, who the fuck cares about the Kardashians when these women are basically presenting themselves as glorified prostitutes? But because that behavior was so normalized with a show like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, everyone thinks that that's acceptable. And this is where things like pop culture, culture that is pushed through movies and music and TV shows and such, is what starts subtly programming the way we behave, the way we look at the world, through which lens we look at the world. And remember, belief is so extremely powerful. So if let's look at religion, for example. For thousands of years, religion has made people believe that they are sinful, that they hold no power, that, for example, sexuality is evil. Yet all of these things were created by God, but because the very tools that were created and were given to us to help us in our liberation, and the true liberation is the liberation of our consciousness, is in living in higher levels of consciousness. Because when people are not operating from consciousness, then we have very asleep people. And this is why the old saying goes, knowledge is power. Because if we are operating from distorted and half truths, then we're missing half of the picture. If you ask somebody to do a mathematical equation, but you're giving them half of the numbers have been omitted, then they're never going to get the right answer. And that is essentially what has happened, where we have all been manipulated because the powers that are falling, the powers that are represented by the elites of this world, whether they be politicians, whether they be musicians, whether they be Hollywood actors, but then there are also the ones that are operating behind the scenes in groups like the World Economic Forum or the Bilderberg Group or the Trilateral Commission or high-level officials within the UN that have never been elected by human beings, that have never been elected by the masses, yet these are the people who make decisions, who create policies that literally impact millions of people in one decision. And they are the ones who are controlling this world, yet they are a minority. And the reason that they can continue to do so is because of the fact that they because of the fact that they have manipulated the majority of humanity into thinking that they are far superior than us, that we are incapable, that we need somebody to come and save us. And this is what religion has done. This is what politics has done. This is what education has done. This is what media has done. This is what the health system has done, is gradually all of these different systems have programmed us into thinking that we are inferior, into thinking that we can't possibly know what is best for us, and we need somebody external that has been more highly educated. Again, educated by whom? Educated by a man-made system that serves to continue keeping most of humanity subservient to a small number of people who control essentially the money systems of this world. Because what really is governing our reality today, what has become the god of humanity today, is money. Because it seems those who have money have the ability to build something in the physical. And those people who have the money are the ones who decides what happens to everybody and everything. Because it all goes back to money, in that whoever is controlling the money can control the way the system is built. So, and it's the same group. Let's, for example, look at the massive corporation known as BlackRock, which is essentially some massive financial institution that manages billions and billions and billions of dollars in assets. But not only that, is that this same group holds majority shareholding in most of the global corporations in the world, who decide exactly how the world is going to go. Because these multinational global institutions and corporations who have the funding are the ones who fund the politicians through lobbying groups, for example. They are the ones who fund the institutions such as the UN, and therefore have a certain amount of sway into what policies get pushed. They are the ones who can fund non-governmental organizations and decide who gets funding versus who doesn't, and how that funding goes, who decides which groups get funding and which ones don't. For example, I have a great bone to pick, and I will put that in a whole other video because there are so many things to say about the LGBT whatever agenda, which is an agenda. And I'm not going against anyone personally. Everyone can do whatever the fuck they want. But as soon as you start imposing your values and your beliefs on other people, when those values and beliefs are distorted, that is where I start to have a problem. And there is more than enough supporting evidence to prove that this is an agenda that is being funded by certain organizations and certain groups in order to push this. Because what this LGBT blah 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 agenda is also doing is that it is causing a lot of psychological distortion where people are confused. If I start going around and saying I am a chair, people are going to think that I have totally lost the plot. But for a man to go around and start saying I identify as a woman, apparently that's completely acceptable because there is a framework that has been pushed on such a large level and that is continuously being supported and being pushed through things like media and Hollywood people and musicians. And because these people who already have a significant and large following, if they continue normalizing this behavior, then eventually enough people start thinking, oh, well, yes, this is absolutely acceptable because all of these people accept it and it's accepted in Hollywood and everyone apparently is looking up to Hollywood and everyone wants to be rich and famous and glamorous and all of these things. But we don't realize all of the things that these Hollywood people and others within these higher levels of society are really engaging in. And so it all comes down to psychology and what we believe. So a good question for you to start asking yourself is, do I believe this because I really believe this, or do I believe this because this is something that I was told and repeated over and over and over and over again until eventually now I've just accepted it as being truth because enough people believe it. And we've seen that, unfortunately, most of humanity today cannot think for themselves and simply follow what everyone else is doing. If enough people do one thing, then most people will continue to do that thing because people no longer know how to critically think. And those of us who do critically think, those of us who question the system, those of us who question things that don't make sense, well, in a term that was coined by the CIA, we are called conspiracy theorists. But I prefer the term conspiracy factualist because we spend hours and hours and hours studying facts and repeating patterns that become undeniable. You know, Einstein said that to do the same thing over and over and over and expect different experiences is the definition of insanity. And so when there are enough people out there who are continuing to say something here is wrong, something here is wrong, but because the powerhouses, whether this be celebrities, whether this be people at high levels of power, whether this be the media that continually says, no, anybody who questions is a conspiracy theorist, anyone who questions is a conspiracy theorist, well then those of us who are actually questioning the system, we start appearing to look crazy by other people's standards when we are the ones who are the most sane. Because I remember back in the day being educated and being taught, always question everything. But now apparently if we question too much, we're crazy. Because this is how the system has been set up. And so what we really have to start questioning is whose beliefs have we accepted? Whose beliefs are we living by? Because are they truly our beliefs? Or are they beliefs that have been engineered into us until they become reality? Because it is better for us to create a system in which there is not love and connection and unity, but more separation, division, and hatred. Because that is what society is today. Racism, fascism, capitalism, nepotism, feminism, all of these isms are man-made systems that serve to continue separating us, separating us, separating us. You go into the animal kingdom, there is no separation between species. Lions are not going to start saying, oh no, I'm not a lion because my mane is bigger than yours. I'm not a lion because maybe my tail is a bit shorter than yours. It is literally only the human species, yet we are all of the same species We seem to not be able to get on because of all of these boxes in which we have been placed that separate us and keep us hating one another, because we, rather than saying I'm a human being, we are all created equal, we now start bringing in, oh well, I have more money than you, therefore I cannot treat you with respect, and I own this house and you live in a shack, therefore we can't be together. And that is completely nonsense. All of this serves to continue keeping us separate, 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 so that we are fighting each other rather than fighting the very system that has been created specifically to keep us creating a system that does not serve the creation of life. We are living in a system that wants destruction and annihilation. And if we continue moving in this way, that is exactly what is going to continue happening. We can see many species that have disappeared because of human beings. We were put on this planet to be the guardians of this planet, and all we have done is destroy it continuously. Why is it that we cannot get on with one another? Why is it that we cannot look after our habitat? It is because of the programming that is being pushed on us from every single direction. And the reason why many people question what is wrong with the system. I realized that my microphone was off most of this time, so I hope. Anyways, what is the problem is that the reason why we haven't been able to see it is because the system is so massive and is what looms over everything. This system that is controlling everything is a corrupted and distorted system. And this is the problem. We have to start understanding that the external system is a manifestation of a distorted psychological internal system that has kept us creating people who behave in ways that go directly against the way we are supposed to operate. And so I want to leave this video here now because this has been a lot of information once more, but really the highlight of this video today is to help you start realizing and seeing how the systems of this world are distorting the way we think, the way we look at the world, the way we behave, and therefore the way we show up in the world. So we have to stop blaming the government, the politicians, all of these beings, but we have to start taking accountability ourselves and looking at the fact that we are just as much to blame because of our psychology. The way out of this corrupted and distorted system is by changing our psychology, is by changing our nervous system, because this is how we embody both mental and physical. But we also have to bring in the spiritual aspect, which is our soul that knows deep down. Every human being knows what is right and wrong. This is literally encoded within our DNA. But this is where all this distortion has come in, where we question what is right and what is wrong. But we know that when somebody is dying in front of us, if we have food, we know the right thing to do is to help that person. And this is what used to come naturally to human beings. But all of these distortions over thousands of years have caused us to lose our humanity, to lose our compassion, even if people look different to us, even if people behave different. Because at the end of the day, if we do not have compassion, what do we have? We are creating out of hatred, out of envy, out of greed. And that breeds a very different type of human being than one that is operating out of love and unity consciousness. So if you are on the journey of transformation, if you are on the journey of wanting to know yourself better, understand why your soul chose to incarnate at this time, then this is the work I do. You will be able to find more details as to how you can work with me in the description box below. So if you resonated with this video, please like and share it. Subscribe to the channel. I post on here once a week, and we'll be continuing to share more of this information with you on a weekly basis. In the meantime, I wish you all a wonderful Sunday, and I will see you in next week's video. Bye for now.